Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Cup of Joy. I'm your host, Ariana Joy Christie, and I am so glad that you are here. This is a space to inspire, to learn, to grow, and to challenge. Get ready to fill your cup and spread a little joy along the way. Jordanna Nativ, eating psychology coach, personal trainer, and nutrition coach, and also co-founder of Get Sculpted. Welcome to Your Cup of Joy.
Thank you. This is so exciting. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited to have you here because I feel like we've run into each other so many times. So to actually get to sit and chat for a while is such a blessing. I'm so happy you're here.
It so is. I'm psyched for the conversation.
Amazing. So I feel like I have so many things to talk to you about and so much to get into. And I want to start by talking a little bit about your transition from corporate marketing to actually becoming a full-time coach. How did this come about for you?
Well, long ago, just kidding, kind of long ago, it's been almost 10 years and it took a while to make the transition, if I'm being honest. And I think a lot of women who have these aspirations of doing something for themselves and building something of their own making, you have to get realistic and be like, okay, I need to plan this transition because, as a mom with responsibilities, like we have to be practical about what that looks like. So I spent, the first 15 years in corporate marketing. I climbed the corporate ladder. I did all the things. I worked with the clients and managed teams and worked on budgets and proposals and pitches and all these wonderful things. And when I had my daughter, I went through my body transformation, being postpartum, learning how to live in a postpartum body, being able to start to love my body again, which was a struggle before I had my daughter, and figuring out what my path forward looked like. So I had the opportunity to invest in my first coach at that time, and I learned so much. I learned about how to actually fuel my body, how to navigate a gym properly. What does it look like to set goals that are not about losing, but about gaining? And this really set a wonderful foundation for me. And when I did my very first professional photo shoot, which is really just a celebration for myself, I sat there and was like, holy moly, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be paying forward this experience to women. And that set me on about a 5-year path to re-educate myself, to go back to school multiple times, to learn more about the field, to figure out, can I actually make this into a career? And, a lot of things happen for a reason. I went through a really big struggle in my corporate life. I took a leave of absence. It was a really tough environment for me. And during that time, I made the commitment to myself that within a year from that moment, I would be running my own business. Not did I realize would the pandemic quickly play quite a role in that. So my husband and I he's one of the biggest believers in me. We took a very big risk. We decided to sell our home so that I could fund leaving the corporate world for a period of time and downsize. And when we sold our home, it was the same week that the pandemic hit. And I gave notice to my work at that same week. So sold the home, gave the notice, pandemic hit.
Oh my gosh.
World closes. So on this amazing culmination of making this transition and fulfilling a dream, such a big global transition happened. And it really propelled me forward to helping people even more because the mental health impact of that time was so major. The physical health impact was so major. So that is, in a nutshell, the story of how I went from corporate into being a full-time coach.
That's incredible. And what a huge risk, to sell your home, I think it's interesting to me too, to go back to that pivotal moment for you. Like when I'm asking people about, how did you get to where you are today? Some people really have this moment and others don't. And so to really think back to that photo shoot as being this like kind of aha moment for you is so cool. And I just love that. But then, like you said, to have the support from your spouse, to be able to make a huge risk like that, a decision to sell your house and give notice, like I can't even imagine the feelings that would be going on in your mind.
It was wild.
No kidding. And did you have kids at that point too?
Yeah, my daughter was at the time in grade 1. So
Wow.
it was crazy. It was like, you know, it's amazing because we talk about believing in ourselves,
Hmm.
but I think you really believe in yourself when you're willing to take that next step and
Yeah.
that big risk in investing yourself and believing in myself enough to say, hey, if it fails, sure, I might have really messed up our future for a while. And that was a big lesson that I'll probably have to learn. But I know I'm always going to be okay. I
Yeah.
know that I have enough skills. I could go back to the corporate world if I wanted to. I could
Mhm.
start another business. The journey of entrepreneurship is not for everyone. But it was definitely a path I needed to walk.
That's incredible. So amazing. And so into coaching, like was coaching something that you always were interested in or wanted to pursue, or was it really just from your experience with a coach that made you want to pursue that?
I feel like I've always been on some level a teacher. I grew up my job I had as a teenager was a swimming instructor and a
Oh.
lifeguard, and I loved just, seeing kids click and being able to go from not doing something to achieving, and that
Hmm.
was very fulfilling for me. And one of my favorite parts of being in the corporate world was actually people leadership and guiding and grooming others to be more successful. And so coaching, I feel, came as like a natural progression in terms of that teaching and guiding. And instead of helping, my colleagues grow and get a promotion, I'm helping women unlock their truest potential and in one area of their life, in health and fitness. And I feel like that is when you can do that, that's the blueprint that unlocks this potential in every other area of your life.
I believe that for sure too. Like everything is so connected. And as an individual who has struggled more than enough with my own self, I think you're right. Everything is connected. And I just think that's incredible. It's funny that you're saying the thing about teaching, how that was always in you, because just this morning I was driving my kids to school, and it's probably my favorite part of the day is listening to their conversations. We have about a 25-minute drive together, and all three of them sit in the same row. The twins are 3, and my daughter's 2. So their conversations are quite hilarious. And I was saying to the twins, they were teaching Callie to say something properly. And I said to them, that's really good teaching. You're such a good teacher. And Axel, my son, looked at me and said, Mommy, I'm not a teacher. Like I just said the funniest thing ever. And I said to him, No, you are. All of us can be teachers in some
Mm-hmm.
way. Like, look how, and I really just explained how, as a big brother, they are able to teach their younger sister, Callie. And sometimes they teach me things. And we had this really great learning moment of you really can be a teacher from any place in the world or in your stage of life. It doesn't have to just be as a specified teacher or even as a coach. Like there are so many different aspects where I'm sure you have found yourself teaching others different things that you've learned.
Listen, when we stop learning, we stop growing. So at
Yes.
every age and every stage, we should embrace wanting to learn new things and
Mhm.
changing our ways around what we thought was, the best way, when we were 20. What was the best way to lose weight, quote unquote? And today, okay, what is the best way at 40 plus? Like how do we be
Yeah.
strong? How do we shift our mindset around that? And that can happen in the health and fitness space. It can happen in, learning to tie our shoes. It all works together.
Yes, I just think that's so incredible and so amazing. I do want to note a little bit though. I think, we talk about the entrepreneurial road or route, leaving a corporate job. I think it's kind of a blessing that through the pandemic, people were able to find alternative ways to monetize things that they loved to do and to not necessarily always have to be in a role that maybe they didn't feel was best suited to them. But I
Mhm.
do think that, especially because of social media, I would say that entrepreneurship is so glamorized. And I think
Totally.
that there are good parts that are constantly highlighted, and then the challenging or more difficult parts are sometimes just pushed aside to not really be seen. So for people who are thinking about making a big move or maybe going through a transition, whether it's in entrepreneurship or not, what are some of the biggest challenges maybe that you faced during your transition to your new career?
So I think the biggest one is I often say that the corporate world was my golden handcuffs. you know? You
Oh,
have stable income, you have
yeah.
paid vacation, you have healthcare in most cases, and depending
Mhm.
on how up you go in, you get other benefits being, an executive. And with that comes a lot of comfort where you might not love everything about the corporate world, but giving up those perks that you get
Mhm.
can seem really difficult. So it's like, what's that trade-off that you're willing to make? And I think the one of the things that if you're considering entrepreneurship that really needs to be thought through is that journey, the gap between you being successful as a corporate person and you being successful as an entrepreneur. There's a
Mm,
big gap there. Nobody talks about it. The
yes.
ramp up phase, and
Yeah,
that ramp up phase, it's like a friggin' roller coaster. It is the
literally.
biggest, baddest, craziest ride you will ever be on. It's exciting. It is scary. You want to cry. You want to throw up. You want to like laugh your head off. You want to
Mhm.
celebrate yourself, like all the things. Am I right?
All the things at once
At
sometimes.
once.
You're like, what is even happening to me?
What is going on? And so I think having a plan for that time frame,
Mm,
and that's where for us the idea of selling our home became actually a practical next step because it gave us what would, some people might call the seed money to start and sustain ourselves at a minimum and then downsize our lifestyle into a place that allowed us, a runway to fill that gap because
mhm.
my husband works full time. He's also an entrepreneur. So between the two of us, we have to sort of manage the highs and lows of that. And no one could predict, especially in that time frame, what would be successful and what would blow up in your face. And that was amplified in that period of time. So I'd say that would be
For
the
sure.
first thing. And then the second thing is don't think you can do it all by yourself, right? You
Yeah.
are an entrepreneur, but that doesn't mean you have to be a silo and you don't have to do it by yourself. And
Mm,
there are great ways to tap into resources and people and contractors or partners that you might be able to work with temporarily or full time that help you upgrade your skill set or that take certain tasks off your plate. And that's where I found for me, it was a great opportunity. I have two business partners as part of Get Sculpted and
amazing.
we really work together to complement our skills. And so if that's something that is an opportunity, that's great. There's also things like Fiverr and other platforms to
Mhm.
help you tap into like VAs and different things to help take things off your plate.
Yes.
And so those I'd say are the two most underrated areas that people don't really think about when,
Mhm.
the less glamorous side. Like, what is your actual plan? How are you going to
Yeah.
execute all this work? Who's going
Yeah.
to pay for it? And how do you make money?
Yes, and those are all, like, such good questions that sometimes are not asked when making these huge life decisions and transitions. But I have a girlfriend who this message always sticks in my head from her, and it applies to, like, whether it's on entrepreneurship or a corporate job or just your life in general, being a parent, anything, and it's that there is literally no award for doing it by yourself. No
Yes.
one's gonna give you a medal at the end saying like, "Hey, good job, you didn't ask for help." That's like not a thing. So, accessing help, asking for support is just such a good tool, such a good idea. And if anything, I think it brings you more because entrepreneurship can be lonely.
Totally, especially
Why
when
would you
it's a
wanna do it by yourself?
virtual. When it's like a
Yeah.
virtual entrepreneurship, you can be very isolated. You can be at your computer all day long. You can be filming content or working on plans or writing copy. And then all of a sudden you've spent like 3 weeks by yourself. You're like, are there other humans beside my family around me?
Like, what's happening here? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think asking for help and building kind of a support system is so important. I want to talk a little bit about what eating psychology coach really is, what that means to you, and how it kind of came about. How did that become your focus?
Yeah, so eating psychology coaching is really I see it as the bridge between not just what you're eating and how you're eating it, but why you're eating it.
Hmm.
It's like that trifecta. And I think it's really the gap to why people have not been able to and sustainably reach their goals and actually maintain their goals long after
Yeah.
because we didn't really address the why things were happening in a certain way. Why was the self-sabotage happening? Why were certain food choices happening? Why was the snacking happening? And when we're able to look at the why, which is multiple levels deeper than just like, oh, here's some food you should be eating, here's how much you should be eating of that food, and then marry that with why,
Hmm.
then you get to a place where you can be like, oh, I understand myself so much better. I understand my relationship with food, because food is all around us in
Yeah.
we have to eat to survive.
Hmm.
We eat to celebrate. We eat to mourn. We eat to
Yeah.
create connection and, with others, with our family, with our friends. And
Hmm.
so if we start to look at our relationship with food as a lever in our health and fitness journey, it really helps propel us forward to a place where I've seen clients get incredible results and sustaining results. You can follow a plan once, no problem. Everyone can do 75 hard ones, but
Yeah.
can you do 365 days consistent? That's a great question. And for me, why it became such a big part of what I want to do is because that was my biggest challenge.
Mm.
I yo-yoed since I was 12 years old, you
Yeah.
know? And so going on diet after diet after diet, now being 41, dieting for 30 years, nobody wants to live their life that way. But
Yeah.
yet, that is how we've been conditioned to do it. And
Hmm.
so when I dug into my own relationship with food, it was really inspiring to see the changes that I could make, the healing that I had done, all of these little reasons why I used food as a coping mechanism got healed.
Mm.
It opened up a whole new way to look at food and my health and the relationship with my body. And that's what I want to deliver to clients. And that's what I want to elevate this industry to have a new standard, not just to look at how lean can we get somebody and how fast can we do it, but why do they want it? Why do they need it? And what is the best outcome for them?
It's amazing because I think even now, like traditionally more so, I think we saw this, 20 years ago in magazines and, you're grocery shopping and you look over at Cosmo where people and all the headlines are like, lose 20 pounds in 7 days or how I lost, this much weight in this much time. And they're all numbers based and they all are this messaging that this is supposed to be happening to you. You're supposed to be doing this. And I think it is damaging. Like it's something that I have struggled with for forever, like since I can remember, because it's constantly thrown in your face. And I don't think it was ever something that I even acknowledged was happening to me until now, like being postpartum and really like actually talking about my health with a doctor. But
Mm-hmm.
beforehand, I think I just kind of watched myself go through it because I thought everybody was. So, with that being said, what do you think really is your different approach between like an eating psychology coach versus a traditional fitness or diet program?
hmm I think traditional diet programs are looking at what is your goal and how do I get you there? It's like
Mm,
faster, smaller, faster, better. That is sort of their model, right? How quickly can I get you to the goal? Which is why you see the 20 pounds lost in, 3 weeks, or
yeah.
I can lose 10 pounds before the holidays.
Yeah.
I don't use language like that. The language is, what is your long term health goal? What is like optimized health and fitness look like for you? And often that starts with physical goals because that's where we've been most conditioned. And also,
Mhm.
that's like an easy way to convey this is
Mm,
what my goal is. And then it's my job to go multiple layers deeper. Okay, you want to lose 20 pounds? What does that mean to you? How does that impact your health? What does that allow you to do differently? Are there
mhm,
medications that you could come off of because you've now lost that weight? What's the quality of life? How do your relationships improve?
mm,
That's where we sort of paint the picture of success. And the why you want to lose that 20 pounds becomes far more meaningful. And we can actually create milestones along the way that, let's say someone can come off of a medication or reduce a medication. That's going to have tremendous impact on someone's life, like
yes.
day in and day out. If someone's
Yeah.
able to run up a flight of stairs without getting winded, that's massive. Or keep up with your kids or jump up and play and go and here and there and run to all the activities and be part of life.
Yeah.
We don't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. And that's the difference.
Huge, a huge difference. And you're right, so different than like an app that I used to use that you put in your ideal weight and your ideal amount of time, and then it spits out how many calories you should eat a day. Like
Yeah.
how terrible that I used to think that that was the only way that I could get a hold of my health. But I think we are just conditioned to believe that. Here's a free app, download it, do this, do that. It's wild. And so you work primarily with women in their 40s and beyond. So what's maybe the biggest misconception that you see in health and fitness for women in their 40s?
Oh my God, Ariana, where do I start?
Lots, okay?
Lots.
Oh,
Carbs are bad. Cardio is the only way,
yeah.
or, weights are going to make me bulky, or, I should be intermittent fasting, or I should be doing keto, or I should be doing all of the things,
Mm-hmm.
even to the extremes of extreme caloric deficits, still believing that 1200 calories is the only way to get to their goals. Meanwhile, 1200 calories is the recommended amount for most toddlers. So I don't want to eat like a toddler. I don't want you eating like a toddler. Like you want to
Literally.
be eating a little bit more than Axel, right?
Yeah,
Like
literally. But as you said, all of those things, like those are all things that I actually sometimes even still like believe
mhm.
because they've been in my brain my whole life, my whole adult life at least, and I'm 30.
Yeah.
So like imagine if I had even more time to be looking at these magazines and consuming all of this information. Like it really is, yeah, it's wild. There's so much work to be done. I'm just
And
realizing.
every diet takes one of those core beliefs, amplifies it, puts a price tag on it, and tells you this is the best way. This is the only way. And when we live in a world of such
Yeah,
extremes like that, we start to fall into those traps more and more often. And then
totally.
the things that are the least sexy, like, hey, eat consistently throughout the day, work out 3 times a week, go for a daily walk. They're like, that's not going to work. That's too easy. Or I can't do that consistently. I need to give it my all for a short period and then do what? Like let things slide for a long period and then start all over again. So what I see most commonly happen is women have gone really, really hard for short periods of time, gotten to a goal, and then they revert behaviors because they were way too extreme in any one of them or any combination of them. And then we're
Mhm.
right back to where they started all over again. And whether that cycle is 1 year or 5 years, it doesn't matter. We're
Yeah.
doing damage long term to the body and to our mindset. Like we're thinking we're a failure.
Literally story of my life. So then I think, like as we're talking, that whole diet culture kind of around the 90s and 2000s where it was every headline and all these toxic beliefs of like, yeah, like no carbs, only do cardio, do it for this long, do like all these crazy things. How do you help your clients or people like me unlearn these beliefs that are literally like still in our head? Like when you're saying like, oh, carbs are bad, like I know in my logical brain that that's not true, but still sometimes when I'm like meal prepping, I'll be like, oh, shouldn't put rice in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Like how wild that that's just still living in me. So how do we get rid of that?
Rent free too, eh?
Rent free, yeah, literally. Like I'm having conversations knowing that that's not the case. My doctor's telling me you need to eat more times a day, and still I'm like, nah, I probably shouldn't.
Yeah. So I like to think that the proof is in the actions we take. And so
Mhm.
sometimes it is following the plan and not our mood, right?
Yeah.
Not the beliefs that we have all the time. But if you have an expert pulling together an amazing plan for you, backed on science, backed on proof of many other clients, backed on, adjustments and pivots and all the intakes that you provided to me, we go through a very deep conversation initially with new clients and then an intake process where we gather even more information. So how many times a day do you like to eat? What are your favorite foods? What are things in the household that are non-negotiables? What are foods anyone's allergic to or hates?
Mhm.
And we build a meal plan that supports you in your goals, includes things that you enjoy, excludes things that you hate, but are in the ratios that are going to get you to the right goals. So, like when we talk macros, protein, carbs, and fats that are going to get you to your goal, and you start to execute that, most clients in their first 2 to 4 weeks will say, oh my God, this is so much food. I've never eaten this much in my life, but the scale has gone down. My clothes are fitting better. I have more energy. I'm sleeping better. That's when we start to rewrite the story.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible because yeah, I think there are so many people that, like I said, struggle with it without even knowing. Like until I'm actually having these conversations, I'm just thinking that's like normal behavior.
Yeah.
I
And
thought,
wouldn't we want normal behavior to be like, "Oh, I eat multiple times through the day. I eat when I'm hungry. I know when I'm full. I can trust my body. I can go on
mm,
vacation and enjoy foods and know that when I come home, everything's going to be okay." Like I have the strength to lift up my kids or to carry a bunch of boxes or all the groceries. Like
yes,
that's really where we want to transition our mindsets
yes,
to.
agreed for sure. And now you're a mom, you shared with us. How do you think that being a mom has influenced the way that you coach and maybe connect even with your clients?
It's everything. Like, if you have lived and breathed similar experiences as somebody, that
Mm,
level of empathy and compassion,
yeah.
and not just works based on science, but what works based on real life. Like,
Mm.
sure, I can be like, Ariana, eat 6 times a day in this little frequent. Who has time to eat 6 times a day? Like, you might be like, I can eat 3 times a day, and like that's what I can do. Then
Yeah.
we build the plan to make that happen,
Mm,
right? So it's about being able to pivot with real life experience. And I think that that's where a lot of women in our age group, or even like women who are moms, are still turning to. And this is of no offense because there are incredible coaches in younger demographics, but you really want to be working with somebody that has some lived experience as you. And that's also why I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and women who
mm.
are in the corporate space, because I remember, I know what it was like. I lived being quadruple booked and, running for the train and all of the things that create these incremental stressors in your life, and lived it through a fit life. So being
Mhm.
able to adjust and pivot as life throws things at you as a mom, as a working mom, that's an important element in terms of how I coach.
That's incredible, and I think it's true, like, having that, relatability also creates trust, like, as someone who would be a client, I think I would feel more trustworthy with people who understand fully what I'm going through instead of saying what like, if they've experienced it, it is a little bit of a different level of understanding, I would say,
Yeah. And one of the things that we all have deep in our psyches, deep in our minds, we're kind of like, I don't want my kids to struggle the way I've struggled. And
literally.
so having those conversations as part of the coaching relationship to say, hey, here's some things that you can try at home to improve your kids' relationship with food, or to try new foods and open up their palate, or, to help them understand how foods taste and do fun little experiments together at the table, making food fun and
Mm,
making food relatable, and gearing them towards the, food is for strength. Food is to, oftentimes people say like, well, how do I tell my kid why I'm weighing my food? And it's like, well, mommy's learning how to be strong, and I need information to know that I'm eating enough to be
mm,
strong. We don't have to show it from a way of like, well, I'm trying to lose weight, so I need to monitor everything, because
yeah.
that's actually not the goal. The goal is to learn how to be strong.
That's amazing, and changing that narrative, I think, is so important, and I think something that I think a lot of moms, especially, like, myself as a mom of a daughter, is exactly that, like, how am I acting in front of my children that they're picking up? Because they literally pick everything up that we do. It's
Everything.
wild to me. The other day, actually last night, I, like, looked in the living room, and my son was doing my daughter's hair, and he, like, was watching exactly how I do it. They were sitting in the same chair, like, it was I was like, "Wow, they literally watch every single thing that we do." And so, my relationship with food, the things that I say when I'm getting ready for the day,
Mm-hmm.
even, like, the negative talk that I sometimes tell myself or will talk to my husband about, like, I have to really now be aware of where I am, who I'm around when I'm saying certain things, and just be cautious around them because they do pick everything up. I actually saw a video, um, I don't know what account posted it, but it was something about how we have to change the language even when we're putting on makeup. So my kids will
Mm-hmm.
ask me like, "Mommy, why are you putting on makeup?" Or my son came into the bathroom this morning, "Mommy, why do girls do that to their hair?" Because I was curling my hair. And instead of saying like, "Oh, I want to look pretty," I was like, "Oh, sometimes it's just fun to change the way we look." Or like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just like special to dress in a certain way. Like we can choose how we want to be in the day. And really changing that language instead of saying, "Oh, this is how I look pretty," or "This is how I look good," to just something that's like fun, I think is everything. Like really, really does change. So what do you think that like the key really is to setting these healthy examples for our kids both, I guess, in fitness and body image.
Yeah, I think it's actually doing it for yourself first because we can
Mm.
say all the things,
Mm-hmm.
but and our kids pick up on what we say, but they pick up more on what we do. And
Yes.
I think that's where sometimes the gap is. It's like, oh, mommy said this, but she's doing that. And they know that. They're so smart. They are incredibly brilliant and they pick up on
Very.
everything, just like you said. And so, some of the things that I did at home very, very early on with Scarlett, even when like as young as 2, 3, 4 years old, is we have a white, like a dry erase marker in the fridge, in the fridge, that is wrong, in the bathroom with the mirror, right? And we
Oh,
would write messages like affirmations on the mirror. And
I
so
love that.
sometimes it's like, I am smart, I am creative, I'm beautiful as I am, all of these wonderful messages. And so I started writing these little quotes for myself. And Scarlett was like, what are you doing, mommy? And I was like, oh, I'm writing these things, these reminders. I want to make sure that I'm, they're in front of my face every day. So they help me, remember them. And then eventually I'll believe them and they'll just be part of who I am. And Scarlett's like, I want to do that. And so, it was like Scarlett's first thing was like a crown on the mirror. And I just love that because it
Oh,
was like, I'm the queen, like
yeah.
I'm good, fix your crown. We're all good. Like,
Yeah.
and just, happy faces. And they obviously couldn't write, but, just those things that are reinforcing. And so I think really the key is you can't just talk about it. You have to actively practice it. And it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay for
Yeah.
your kids to see that vulnerable side of you and to see that you're a work in progress because it allows them to be a work in progress.
Mm.
And enabling that vulnerability through strength and action, I think is really, really powerful.
That's amazing. I definitely 1000% agree with that. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk
Yeah.
about self-care, which goes hand in hand with your practice, I think.
Hmm.
And for me, like self-care a lot of the time is moving my body. It's creating space or time to have some type of movement because I literally am a different person when I move my body. And it
Oh,
took my
same.
husband like telling me, and not in a mean way, but he was like, I actually think you have to like just create space and time for you to do that because even if it's just a quick walk or something, like I
Hmm.
just can think better. I'm a nicer person,
Aren't
just
we
a
all?
better version of myself. So, as a fitness coach, do you talk about self care with your client?
Yeah, it is ingrained in everything that we do. The
Amazing.
reason why women come to me is to figure out what their fit life looks like.
Mm,
So it's not the life you're living for, 6 months or a year or transitionally. You want to set up the foundational things that are going that you haven't been able to do on your own. That I'm always starting on Monday or I'll start in the new year.
yeah.
You want to start now and you want to do it once and for all and you can build on that as you go because who you are building today is the person you will be in 5 years, in 20 years, in 30 years when you're like not just a mom, but a grandma. Like
Yeah.
that's what you're building when you start to look at self care today. And I think it's also been, I love that self care and mental health in general has come to so much more of a forefront and it's
Hmm.
taking a much bigger role in what we think about health and fitness in general, but we still have a long ways to go because it's
Yeah.
still so short sighted. So, setting up things like walks, setting up time to, journal if that's your thing or whatever is your thing, how do we set that up for you to be successful and do it consistently? I have some
Hmm.
clients where we start with like a 1 minute meditation per day and they just go into that and it's like, cool, I did 1 minute and that is successful and that set the tone for my day. Or at
Hmm.
the end of the day, taking a minute just to even think. You don't have to write it down or do too much more, but before you go to bed, take a stock of what were some of my wins today? What did I do great? What happened that I want to repeat tomorrow and what's setting the intention for that the night
Yeah.
before, when
Yeah.
you go to sleep. And so being able to take whatever my clients are working on and building that into what their success path looks like and framing out where do we start? What's step two? What's step three? How do we build this over time? Because we tend to just rush into everything
Yeah.
and go all in and
Mhm.
do the 100%, and then we can't maintain it. So,
Yeah.
part of a one on one coaching relationship is being able to dig into your life one piece at a time and, put that piece in, put that piece in. Okay, we're going to get consistent workouts going. We're going to get nutrition in play. How do we make that consistent? How do you eat out? How do you go on vacation? How do you recover from being sick? How are you going to do this with your kids? All of that comes into play, and we're able to identify what's the game plan for you.
It's amazing. It kind of goes back to the whole thing of like success looks different for everybody. So like, what is
Totally.
that for you? And instead of having like there's some programs that it's like the same size fits all. Here you go, do this, you'll lose this much weight. But everybody is different and everybody's goals are different and schedules are different. And
Mm-hmm.
I even liked that you said like you look at things that people like to eat and don't like to eat, because I am so picky. So like no nutrition plan has ever worked for me because I don't eat things like eggs. Like that's an
Mm-hmm.
easy protein that I wish I liked, but I just don't. So I think it becomes difficult when you have a little bit of a different maybe lifestyle or preferences, that not every system will work for you.
Exactly. And there's a lot of ways to get to a goal, but if you don't find the way that works for you, you'll just be stuck.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. And I think that happens to a lot of people and then they just give up because it seems like every system is the exact same. So
exactly.
it becomes difficult in that sense, I think. Um, is self-care different for you now personally compared to when you were in the corporate world?
Totally. I had a really, I think, underappreciated or limited definition of self care back then. I
Yeah.
thought self care was going to get a massage and,
Mm.
taking a bubble bath. And that is self care, getting my nails done. But I look at self care very differently now. I think everything I do has an element of self care. When I get up in the morning and take my dog for a walk, that's part of self care. Like getting sun on my face every day is
Yeah.
self care. Taking time to not rush through I am a super type A, run full speed, Aries girl. Like, I'm going to get the job done at all costs.
Hmm.
And I had to learn what my real pace and process was. That's self care.
Yeah.
Going to therapy and starting to work on that side of, things that bothered me that were pent up, like how to deal with emotions, like that is self care. And so
Yeah.
being able to embrace all the things that become, the foundations of my mental health, and then
Hmm.
be able to bring those options forward to my clients. Again, it just allows that lived experience to be part of the questions that we can ask as coaches. And I think what's so beautiful about Get Sculpted and what we've pulled together is that it really is 360 degrees of you. We include breath work biweekly with our
Oh.
clients because that mental health aspect is important. And you can do it with
Mhm.
the whole family. Everyone can lie down and do it at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we do workouts, and that's why we do nutrition, and that's why we do live events. And we like to bring it all together because you are a whole person and everything should be addressed.
That's amazing. I love that. One of my favorite things about this podcast and having it kind of centered around self-care is listening and hearing about people's perspective of self-care. Because like you said, like I used to think it was like you have to take a day off of work and you have to go and spend thousands of dollars at the spa and it's not
Yeah.
accessible for everyone. And so I'm just never going to be able to take care of myself.
Yes. That's exactly
Right?
it.
It's like this extreme thinking, but I think for people, or like a bath, like I don't like baths. So like
No,
I
me
don't
neither.
know. Like how can I ever practice self-care if I have to take a bubble bath? And I used to try. Like I would set up my bathroom with candles and I'd buy a bath bomb and I would do all these things and I'd sit there like just hating it.
Hating every moment of it, or the bathtub is too small and I'm like, I thought this was
Yes.
supposed to be relaxing, or like someone interrupts my bath and is like, mom, or babe, can you help me? It's like, I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be self-caring right
Yeah.
now.
It's wild how we just have these ideas in our mind that that's what I'm supposed to like, and that's not the case. And so I think changing the perspective to things like, even a 10-minute walk. Like I used to think if I don't have an hour in a day to do something for myself or to move my body, then I can't work out and I can't practice
Yes.
self-care. Like today's a wash because I'm not able to. But now I'm like, oh, I can take the phone call that I have at 2 o'clock for 15 minutes for a walk. And now at least I've
Yes.
gotten some fresh air and I'm a better version of myself,
A
you
thousand
know?
percent.
Yeah.
The more we can stop thinking of things in black and white and all or
Yeah.
nothing, it's a limiting belief. And if we can start
Yeah.
thinking in the grays and how can I make this happen? I always like to think about like life is like a little bit like Tetris and how do you make all the pieces fit? You know, how
Yeah.
do you make it work? And what works for you is not going to work for somebody else. And what works for somebody else isn't going to work for you. And so
Yeah.
that's why you need that customized approach and somebody asking you some of those tough questions like, is what you're doing really working for you? Like, why do
Yeah.
you keep doing this thing that's holding you back? Or
Mhm.
have you tried to look at it from this perspective and
Mhm.
opening up a new way for somebody to achieve success?
That's amazing. Changing the perspective, I think, is something that when you say it seems simple, but
Oh,
actually
seems so
practicing it
easy.
is hard. And sometimes you need someone to talk to about it or to show you that perspective, I think, and it can make a huge difference.
And I think also that's where community comes into play. You know, when you're going down these, like you're sitting there saying, oh, I just thought that was normal. I just thought everybody did it that way. I just thought like this is how it was. And it doesn't have to be. And to be in a, you know, we've created this beautiful community to bring women together because
Mm.
you might be 5 steps ahead of somebody that is just starting and you're now the proof that they can do it too. And
Mm.
somebody is 5 steps ahead of you and you're looking at them being like, oh, I'm here, but now I see the path forward. Like we're helping one another enlighten down that road that we're all heading towards and what success looks like for us and giving
Mhm.
us ideas and inspiration and being vulnerable. And I think that when we think about stress responses, one of the stress responses we have as women is to tend and befriend. And we've really been pushed aside in terms of being able to really tap into that, you know, like having our
Mhm.
village around us, our kitchen table. And this is one way of doing that is to create community around the goals that you're going after.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so, so true. And I know you're a fitness coach, so we've focused a bit on fitness, but how do you help guide your clients to kind of redefine what self-care is beyond just being fitness? Like, I think that's a huge piece, especially for me. But as we've talked about it, it is more than that. So how do you help them? Is it something that you see in your practice?
Hmm. When you look at self care, it's really about learning how to prioritize yourself. And
Yeah.
in and being able to find these moments in time to put yourself first.
Mm.
And so when we're talking about setting up goals for yourself and what does your fit life look like for you, that
Mhm.
doesn't just mean how does your fit life like your body and your fitness habits. It's all the habits in your life. It's do you if you know I love to read. So part of my self-care is, you know, reading 5 or 10 pages of a book a day. Or I just got back from vacation and my goal was to actually finish an actual fiction book
Yeah.
because I read way too much for my industry. I was like, no, I need some escapism. Like
Yeah.
that is part of self-care and being able to identify all the ways that we do that and little ways to put ourselves first
Mm.
is not just we call it like non-scale victories. Like how do you identify these things that you want to go after that have nothing to do with how you look but have everything to do with taking care of yourself and setting up a lifestyle that you love to live.
Yeah, I love that. And it is definitely a mindset switch. And I think hard when you're so ingrained in like, the only way to measure a goal is the scale or is the way that my clothes fit or like a number.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I love the change of that and making it be things like you said, escapism. I think it's so important to do things that as a parent, especially, and a working parent, I find a lot of the time I'm trying to do things that are productive. Like if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
doing something productive, I'm feeling like crap. I'm
Or
guilty.
multitasking, like I'm
Yes.
going for a
Yeah.
walk and listening to a podcast and I'm learning this and I'm taking notes or like I'm downloading a recipe and I'm like watching this while I'm cooking and we're always trying to get the most out of our time.
Always. Like I remember it was like a reality check for myself the other day. I was like watching a webinar while I was blow drying my hair and I was like if I can't take 10 minutes to blow dry my hair, I have a problem. Like we need to
Yeah.
figure this out.
And we're
It's hard.
entrepreneurs to build the life that we want to live, right? And so we can
Yeah.
get stuck in building the dream the way that others think we should.
Mhm.
And, as fast as we need to, as, whatever it is. And also we've been taught, especially as women, especially as moms, that our needs go below the family and
Totally.
below, right? The kids and everything, and that everything else needs to come first. And that led me to full blown burnout. And that is why I
Totally.
took a leave of absence when I was still in the corporate world. I had to really go deep and reframe all of that, it
Mm.
really is put your own life mask on first. If the plane's going down, you are no help to anybody if you can't
Totally.
take care of yourself first. And so the
Yeah.
best of me is given when I've taken care of myself first. And
Mm.
that's flipping the script that we need to do. That's the work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the guilt that comes along and that's associated with this, we can tell ourselves and we can have that idea in our head, and sometimes it gets pushed by feelings like guilt or, not wanting to be selfish, which is so silly because it's really actually helping everybody else when we are
Yeah.
a better version of ourselves. But how does mindset play into self-care, especially like in your clients or in your practice? Do you find when you're trying to overcome those feelings of guilt or like prioritize yourself, how can we have that mindset shift? How do you coach people to do that?
Yeah. Some of it is like being okay that the feeling is there.
Mm,
Like we're so wanting to be like, I don't want to feel guilty for putting myself first. And it's like,
yeah.
that just might be how you feel. And you need to get okay with that feeling. You need to sit with it a little while.
Mm,
And you need to ask yourself, like, why do I actually feel guilty?
yeah.
Where is this coming from? What happened when I was growing up, maybe that
Mm,
like things that I learned or things that I saw or messages I received that made it not okay for me to put myself first.
yeah.
And also you're not putting yourself first for everything all the time, all the day. You're
Yeah.
putting yourself first for like 45 minutes.
It's that extreme thinking again. Like
Yeah.
it's wild how our mind works.
It
Yes.
is. And it's so part of it is sitting with it, getting comfortable. The other part is asking yourself some questions around why, where is this coming from, and doing some
Mm.
thought. And then the last part is doing it anyway.
Hmm.
Doing it
Interesting.
anyway and
Yeah.
see what happens. Like, did the world fall apart because you took 10 minutes to blow dry your hair instead of watching the webinar and maybe got the
Yeah.
replay?
Yeah.
Or joined 10 minutes late? Like,
Yeah.
probably not. Like, we feel like we have to show up to everything all the time. And, one of the things that I had to learn was like, it's okay to not do all the things and to prioritize the most important things, because when everything's a yes, nothing's a real yes. And so I really want to give my
Yes.
yeses to like when it's like a heck yes, you're going to know it's a yes for me.
That's where I'm stuck now, I feel like, where you want to do everything. I want to say yes to people. It's not that I don't want to do these things, but then I feel like I'm constantly failing at everything because I can't give one thing 100% because I've said yes to everything,
Yeah.
you know?
And that's where like reclaiming our no and sitting in that power, it's so huge. Like being
Food.
able to actually like no is a full sentence. Like no was the hardest thing for me to say for a very long time because I really wanted to please. I really wanted to live up to expectations. And
Mhm.
this is where we set ourselves up for failure. And
Yeah.
feeling that burnout or not doing the most important things well. And then you sit back and you're like, what happened there? And it's like, I said yes to too many things. I spread myself too thin. And
Yeah.
so being okay with reclaiming our no and that it is a full sentence and that we can give our yeses to the most important things, it's the hardest thing we'll ever do, but it's the
Yes.
most important pivot we need to make.
So impactful. And it's funny because when you say like living up to people's expectations, I think sometimes I even create other people's expectations in my own
Yes.
head. Like they don't even have those expectations for me. I think they do.
Yeah.
It's wild to me. The other
Our
day I
minds are
said
so
to my
powerful.
really, they truly are. I said to my husband, like, I just don't want to let you down if I don't do this. And he's like, why would I care? I was like, you don't? Like, I wouldn't be letting you down. He's like, no. So we
And didn't
really,
it
and
relieve the pressure?
yeah, for a month, I had in my head that like I was going to be failing him if I didn't do this one thing. Like it's wild how we can just totally build it up in our head and it's not even real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it is a huge mindset shift. And obviously it takes work to get there, no doubt. And I think it's constant work. It's not like one day you wake up and you don't have,
It
this
is.
guilt or whatever feeling it is. But I think that it's hard work to work on your mindset because it's not
Mm-hmm.
like a visible thing, but it's so impactful.
And when the mindset clicks, everything else clicks, because then it stops taking so much effort, and
Mm,
it starts becoming the habit that you've always wanted. So by putting
totally.
in, like, if you had to do deep work on something for even a year, deep work, like really paid close attention to something, really learned, really practiced over and over again, maybe failed a few times or had some setbacks, and then had to go at it over and over, but then you were set up with that for the rest of your life, like 50 more years. Isn't that worth it?
Yeah, 1000%. I totally agree with that. What's maybe one piece of advice that you wish you had received earlier about self-care in your life?
Slow down.
I'm hearing that in my heart. Like, I need that. Yeah.
Like, Jordanna, why do you have to do everything at lightning speed
Yeah.
all of the time, 24/7? The lesson of slow down, it keeps slapping me in the face all the time, even
Yeah.
now. And just a crazy story that happened to me when,
Yeah.
you know, back in the day, Scarlett wasn't sleeping so well through the nights. And so I was awake a lot. I was still in the corporate space. And so I was going on maybe like 3-4 hours of sleep on a very regular basis,
Mm.
and working full time, going to the gym, doing all the mommying things, and juggling the corporate space, all of it, while going to school, in my in between the cracks of time, to become certified in my eating psychology coaching certification. And one night, Scarlett got up, and I don't know if anyone else does this, but we were in a condo at the time, and Scarlett's bedroom was on one side and our bedroom was on the other, and you could like pass through the kitchen to get to our room. And we left the dishwasher door open to dry overnight, and Scarlett tripped over
Oh,
the open dishwasher, and all I heard was scream and trip. And I immediately knew, like, our mommy instinct, our superpower, you're like, you already know what happened.
yeah.
Leaped out of bed like Superwoman. Literally, I felt like I was flying.
You probably
Out,
were.
I probably was out of the bedroom, just having this horrible thought that my daughter just plunged into like the knives sitting in the dishwasher. And I was trying to go around the corner to get to her, and I ended up going straight into the wall, and I blew out my knee. And I was like, what just happened? And I still wanted to go and like pick her up and console her. And my husband was like, your knee is like wide open. Like, we
Oh
have
my
to fix you.
God.
I'm like,
Yeah.
no, we have to do this. We have to. He's like, no,
Slow down.
slow down,
Hmm.
stop. Like, now this is about you.
Oh my God.
So I think like the world is always going to send you signals, and it's
Mm,
going to repeat them over and over, and they're going to get louder and more impactful until you listen. And
yeah.
so that was one of the most, like, the loudest messages I got at that time was to slow down, and it's a constant message that I need to listen to.
Mhm. And I think we often need the reminder still too, but what a good message I think that everybody, no matter what your situation, could probably take to just, yeah, take a bit of time, slow it
Yeah,
down.
slow it
There's
down.
no harm in doing that.
You
I
can
love that.
breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes I even feel bad about that. Like if I need just like a breather, I'm like, something's wrong with me. Why can't I? Everybody else does this. Like it's wild the things that
It's
we say to
wild.
ourselves.
Mhm.
Okay, so I also want to touch on before we wrap up here, you have a podcast coming.
Yes, we do. We're launching the Get Sculpted podcast. It is coming on December 5th.
I
We're
cannot
dropping.
wait. Can you share with us a little bit about what that might be like so that people can get excited to listen? Because December 5th is soon.
It's so soon. And so we are launching. So myself, Marilyn, Tiana, we are the co-founders of Get Sculpted. We're launching the Get Sculpted podcast. And this is the place for truth and honesty in the fitness industry. If you are looking to get strong and healthy and build your fit life, this is where we're dispelling myths. This is where we're having honest conversations together, and we're bringing people into this, space that are going to amplify your success in the area. And it's really just going to be an opportunity to share a lot of things like what we've talked about today, but in a broader context. And Merity and I have a lot of different backgrounds and lessons and expertises. And so it's really like when we come together, we're honestly like one big super coach. So I'm super
Aw.
excited to bring this, podcast to life. And it's been so fun to start to record.
Oh, I can't wait. And so it's called Get Sculpted, the
It
podcast?
sure is. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I'm very, very excited. Now, Jordanna, sorry, to end up, usually I do a few rapid fire questions. Are you okay with
Let's
that?
go. Yeah.
Okay, coffee or tea?
Tea.
Are you a Swiftie?
Yes-ish.
Favorite Taylor Swift song?
I'm going to say The Man.
Oh, that's a good one. Guilty pleasure?
I love a good like lounge on the couch day and watching movies like back to back to back.
Best. Okay, go-to movie.
Oh my gosh. This is actually hard.
It is a difficult question.
Can I just say like almost any rom-com that's going to like give me a good cry?
Yes, I
Just
know
to
exactly
like,
that feeling. Yeah.
yeah, I just need like a good cry. Gonna watch a rom-com. It doesn't actually matter what it is or if I've seen it 12 times. Yes.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jordanna, for joining us. Where can people find you, connect with you, work with you?
I love hanging out over on Instagram. You can find me at Jordanna Nativ or over on our Instagram page at getsculpted.ca. And we would love to connect with you and talk to you about your fitness goals.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Your Cup of Joy. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. And if this episode resonated with you, or if you've been loving this show, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you are listening. Your support helps the podcast grow, it helps it reach more people, and it means the absolute world to me. So keep filling your cup with joy, and I will see you next week.